there are these people that have died and they have never been in touch with each other, or they've never even understood near-death experiences, yet they're coming with these same stories. This is so unbelievably interesting. And the more I got into it, the more it allowed me to realize.
Welcome to Medium at Large. I'm David the Medium, and here you can expect some real, raw, and honest conversations around what spirituality actually means to show you that it's not supernatural, it's actually just supernatural. Each week I sit down with some familiar faces from all walks of life to show you how spirituality shows up for them. No filters, no fluff, just raw human stories around belief, doubt, and everything in between. And yes, every now and then, spirit might show up as well. So whether you're deeply spiritual, deeply skeptical, or somewhere in between, you're in the right place. This season of Medium at Large is brought to you by Sarah Grynberg, the luxe but affordable skincare line your skin's been thirsting for. With not one, not two, but 5 essential ceramides, yes 5, Sarah Grynberg hydrates, restores and protects your precious skin barrier. Say goodbye to dryness, say hello to a healthy, radiant glow exclusively at Chemist Warehouse. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to Medium at Large. I've got a very special guest joining us today. She is a mindset coach and author, a live show speaker, and she's also the host of the Life of Greatness podcast. Welcome to Medium at Large, Sarah Grynberg.
Thank you for having me.
Is there anything I forgot there?
No,
I feel like
I was actually thinking, is there a teleprompter? That is a great memory.
Great. Well, you know, I have not an ideal memory, so it's good that I sort of ticked all the boxes.
You ticked all of them.
But you cover so many boxes. Like, I've known you for 5 years now, and I'm just constantly sort of inspired. It sounds so corny to say that, but constantly inspired and motivated even by just seeing your journey and what you're doing.
Oh, that's kind. Has it been 5 years?
Yeah, I think we met 5 years ago.
Wow.
Was it during COVID when I read for you originally?
Yes, it was during COVID.
Yeah,
that's right.
2020. And then we did a live on Instagram.
Yeah, we did a couple of lives on Instagram.
I was like, I've just ruined our reputation.
That's right. We did a couple of lives on Instagram. Jesus, we have known each other for a while.
Yeah, over 5 years now.
There you go.
How does it feel to be on the other side of the microphone?
I love being on the other side of the microphone.
You do? Okay.
I do. I really do. And I think I love asking questions, and I'm so curious about people's lives and stories. Like, really, I am. And I think you would know as an interviewer, what makes you a good interviewer is having the curiosity for other people's stories. But at the same time, like, I love sharing my own and giving my wisdom as well. And you learn so much through the work that you do. And I learn so much through the people that sit on the couch next to me. So there's a lot to share too.
Oh, that's it. It's so interesting because I find it I like having the podcast and I love being able to speak to people, but I find it hard to kind of interview people.
Because I think maybe that's not your
style.
First thing that, I mean, interviewing wasn't the first thing that I ever did either. But for me, it was quite natural in the sense of my background, you know, for many years was acting. So I was used to being in front of a camera and a microphone to an extent, and I'd done public speaking. And then when I moved out of that and kind of into more corporate marketing PR jobs, I yearned still for that stuff. And as you know, I moved into production, working for a big radio station, and I was always in the back, but learning about what goes on when people do interview other people. And, you know, I really grew up loving Oprah and Liz Hayes. They were two of my favorite people. I know, so random. I loved 60 Minutes. I loved watching Liz. And
That's
I loved,
right. I knew the name. I was like 60 Minutes.
I loved Oprah as well. So then when the tables turned and I ended up starting my own podcast, for me, it had felt so natural because my whole life I had been curious of people's stories. I had really listened well. And then I'd been a producer and I taught other people what the skills were to interview people. And I had watched people interview people for many years. So it became a very natural skill for me. So I think, you know, it's something that is learned, but also some people are naturally better at it than others.
No, I definitely agree. And, you know, leading on to the podcast, The Life of Greatness, which is over 500 episodes now, aren't you? How many episodes as of October 2025?
Oh, my God, I don't know. It's something around that. I mean, in April next year, it'll be, I was thinking about this when I was driving here, 7 years.
That's incredible.
7 years. That's such a long period of time.
And your first guest was actually Joe Dispenza, wasn't it?
My first guest was Joe Dispenza. Can I tell you the story behind that? It is a great one.
Well, 100%, because I've got so many questions about your journey into it. But yeah, I want to hear the story behind Joe Dispenza.
So,
to pull him as your first guest, everyone's like, we've been emailing him for 6 months. He hasn't replied.
Yeah, seriously. It was so... it was such a manifestation and so amazing how it kind of came together. So I had an idea of potentially doing a podcast, and it came to me during meditation one day. And as you know, I'm a very big meditator. It's something that I practiced for many years. And I was meditating, and the idea was, you should start a podcast with all your learnings, because I'd experienced, very bad burnout, working in a really full-on job, and I had changed my life in a very radical way, changed my mindset, really threw myself into understanding conscious awareness and my thought patterns and things like that. And in a very small period of time, things started to shift for me. And I started to learn a lot, but also really great things started happening in my life, which had been quite stagnant at that stage. I'd really gotten into Joe's work, and I was going to one of his retreats in Queensland. And I was in meditation one day, and I had this idea for a podcast. I should do a podcast. And then I thought, well, maybe, I'll ask Joe if he wants to come on the podcast if I see him at the retreat. And it was so bizarre. When I had gone to this retreat, and I'd never met the guy before. I'd never been to one of his retreats. I kept bumping into him everywhere. Now he has security around him, and you don't go anywhere near the guy, right? But at that stage, it was
you
still...
harassed him back in the day. He's like, we can't do this again.
So it was still like one of the early days where his following was big, but not to the extent that it was. It was still 800 people coming to a retreat.
Yeah.
And I bumped into him a few times, and I stopped once and I talked to him, and I said, hey, I've got a podcast. Would you want to come on it? And he said, yeah, sure. And it was seriously that simple. And I'm like, I record from Melbourne. He goes, well, I'm going to Melbourne after this to do a talk. We can do it there. My PA will arrange it with you, right? And I'm thinking, holy moly. And cut a long story short, basically, that's what happened. David, I didn't even have a name for my podcast. I didn't have a podcast, right?
Well,
so I had the idea for a podcast, but I didn't actually have one. I think I had said to, the place I worked at the time, I've got an idea for a podcast. And they said, you can start one if you want. But I had not interviewed anyone. So I remember coming home from this retreat, saying to the audio producer at work, we got to go to the convention center tomorrow. I've lined up this amazing guy. I mean, the audio producer had no idea who he was. I remember me and the audio producer jumping on a tram, literally going down to the convention center, which was close. Audio producer had all of the mics and stuff. And this is way before anything was videoed. It just wasn't done in those days. And I sat with Joe and I literally asked him questions that I thought would be interesting. And that was the first interview I ever did on A Life of Greatness.
It's just incredible because, listening to all your episodes, I've been a long time listener now, since we connected a good 5 years ago. And I think it really takes a special kind of person to be able to not only do a podcast like Life of Greatness, because it's not just your Gen Z kind of standard, let's talk about life kind of podcast. Like the questions that you ask, you get so deep with people and even those that maybe have a public image or that we maybe even box into certain sort of categories. It's sort of like you really present them in such a unique kind of way. And as I was saying, it takes a real special person to kind of have that even understanding about how to run that, Sarah. And you sort of touched on it, when you were mentioning feeling a bit burnt out with working in corporate and the sort of the transition. I know your background, obviously executive producing in radio too, but like, do you sort of feel in the lead up to the launch of the Life of Greatness that or for any of us, that if we kind of have that burnout, that's kind of where the spiritual inclination or even spark can kind of begin? I mean, I call it the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
A lot of people maybe don't necessarily understand what that term means, but
absolutely. I think any kind of trauma or negative occurrence can be the spark of spiritual growth, right? But it's dependent on the way that you deal with it. And for me, obviously I was a breakfast radio producer. I had a 2 and a 4-year-old at the time. And it was so unbelievably hectic, like waking up at 3 a.m., 5 mornings a week. And it was a hard role too. The show was quite difficult and no one was happy who was on the show. So there was this real negativity around it. And just day in, day out, I was exhausted. I was coming home, putting the kids to bed, going to bed at the same time as them, sometimes not being able to sleep.
I was gonna say, were you even sleeping?
Yeah, because I was so worried about whatever it was. I was always on call because doing a job like that, you have to know what's happening in the news and current affair and sports, and it just never ends. It's not like, okay, you go to work from 9 till 5, that's it. This is wake up at 3 a.m., you're on till you go to sleep. And it was full on. And I found myself in a situation where my body just gave up and I got so sick. And I spent a few days at home because I was so unwell. And it was in that really deep despair where I thought, how has my life gotten like this, where I'm absolutely exhausted. I don't feel content in a lot of my relationships. I feel like I haven't found happiness in a long period of time. I need to feel my inner cup again. And I had done no work on myself at that stage. I had delved into spirituality and things like that because that had interested me when I was young. But I didn't really understand the personal development concepts as such. And I think when we hit rock bottom, which I had, I wanted to get out of that. I did not want to feel that way anymore. And I had then thrown myself into all the books about the mind-body connection.
So that was a real just mindset.
It was
switch
just
for
a
you,
mindset switch. I was like, I don't want to be like this anymore. I hate this feeling. I am exhausted and I'm not happy. And the most ironic thing about that time, David, as well, I was getting paid more money than at the time I ever had. And from the outside, it looked so great, mixing with celebrities, going to parties, doing all this stuff. And I was miserable because I had an inner world that was just absolutely upside down.
Do you think it's like, obviously it's a real mindset switch for a lot of people to get to that stage where you're like, I don't want to be like this anymore. What sort of tips would you give to someone if you could talk to them in that stage, or even people that are leading into the element of burnout, to really sort of change their mindset around not getting to that point?
Yeah,
or do you
absolutely.
think that in some cases, I mean, personally, I imagine the answer is probably going to be no, but do you think that people kind of sometimes need to get to that point, or is it something that can be avoided?
Well, I would hope not. And I think the work that, both you and I do helps people not get to that stage. Like, you don't have to work on yourself because something bad is happening. But the thing is, we get complacent, right? So change occurs usually because we've been rattled. If it's comfortable, we don't change. And so when people go through that dark night of the soul, or the really bad breakup or redundancy at work or financial crisis or burnout or whatever it is then that they make the decision potentially that they want to change. And ways to find out what to do if you are in that situation. For me, I started really, as I said to you, like going to every personal development book under the sun. I really wanted to understand the mind-body connection. I had learned a lot about the law of attraction through a friend of mine, and I wanted to understand more about that. For me, I wanted to dive more into Buddhism and the way that worked as well. And the more that I did it, the more that I started to really understand I had more control over my life than I realized. The difference is a lot of people will listen to our conversation today, or they'll read a book and they'll understand what we're talking about, but they won't make any of the changes. Because I was in such despair over where I was in my life and I was so unhappy, I literally would read and would completely change my way of being. So, for example, I started studying meditation and I started practicing it every single day, and I did not stop. I started studying visualization, and I would sit there every day and visualize what I wanted to draw into my life. I really started studying the mind, and within that, I understood the idea of conscious awareness and what it was to understand, okay, I've got a negative thought. How do I get rid of that negative thought? And I changed my life in a radical way, but it took work, and it took a lot of work, but I needed for myself to do that work because I wanted to get out of where I was.
And let's touch on that as well, because I find, not only within my own family and my own friends, but even amongst, people that I've related with or connected with on, as being David the medium, how, when people get a negative thought, how do they change that? Because it sounds like such a simple question, but it's so open-ended and broad at the same time. But then it's also like, I'd be interested to hear your opinions on this as well, but I think some people also kind of get so stuck in the journey of this is how life is, that they don't realize that they can actually rewire their brains through their thoughts.
Absolutely. And we know through neuroscience now that the brain is able to rewire itself up until the day that we die, but we need to know how to use it properly, right?
So how do we use it properly? Yeah.
So the first thing I say to people is this: if you have a negative thought come up, know already a positive feeling thought to replace it. So for example, it could be something you love. It might be your dog or your mother or your partner. It might even be a work colleague or a place that you go. Say, for example, it's your dog. You have a dog and you just adore that dog. And when you think of your dog, it brings you joy. When the negative thought comes up, you replace it with the thought of your dog. You might need to do this 50 to 60 times a day, but the more that you do it, the more that you start rewiring your brain to move to the positive rather than the negative. But it takes conscious awareness to realize that you're actually having the negative thought. Most people don't realize that their mind is chattering the whole day, and suddenly they feel sad. And they don't know, why am I feeling sad? I haven't been watching my thoughts. And if you are consciously aware and you watch your thoughts, you will start picking them up before they get to that bad mood or the feeling of sadness, because you're watching, oh my God, I started worrying about this job that I'm doing, or I'm worrying about my finances, or whatever it is.
Things people you can't control even.
Exactly. Things that you can't control, but you realize you're thinking about it. As soon as you realize, you move to the positive feeling thought, and you do that over and over again. And as I said, within time, your mind starts going, your brain, to the positive rather than the negative. But it takes work and it takes conscious awareness.
And that's it. And then there's also some people I find, even with that point, that they feel like that if they don't acknowledge the negative thoughts, that they're somehow just ignoring it, or they're not paying attention to reality. And I don't see that as the case either. But how would you answer if someone says, well, Sarah, if I've got this, pressing issue that's on my mind and it's, taken up my thoughts, I can't just think of my dog.
The thing is, though, if you have a negative thought, but the negative thought is something like, I'm worried about something happening in the future. Well, you can't control what happens in the future. So worrying is not going to change the situation. It's just going to make your present absolutely miserable. So there's no use worrying about anything in life, really. But if you have a situation that's occurred and you can change it, then of course you will go and change it. But that could be just a thought that you have that's a realistic thought, right? And realistic thoughts are just thoughts of things like, okay, I've got to do this today. There's a situation that I might have to do with my family, and I need to sort that out. It's you that puts the negative lens on it. Otherwise, it's just a thought that you have that you can deal with. And that's absolutely okay. So it's not getting rid of those thoughts that we need in everyday life to drive us further. It's when the negative, irrational thoughts come up, ones that make completely no sense for us to worry about, that put you in a freeze and change your mood, that we replace with the better feeling thought. And we do that over and over again. And, I talk a lot about rumination, which is something that a lot of us have, and it comes at like 2:33 in the morning when you're thinking about that negative thing.
I had my best thoughts at that time.
Over and over again, and they feel so dark, especially when you're in bed, right? And I say to people this: there are a few steps. When the negative thought comes up, say for example, it might be, Graham doesn't like me. Do you know for sure?
That's my dad's name.
That,
Who's the real psychic?
That's so funny.
There's my 3 a.m. thoughts. You just downloaded them.
Graham doesn't like me. Do you know for sure that Graham doesn't like you? No, I don't know for sure that Graham doesn't like me. Okay.
Have you asked Graham? Yeah.
Exactly. Have you asked Graham? Is there anything you can do when you're awake to be able to deal with it? Yes, I can call Graham. I can see. Okay, so then you're dealing with that. Then you go to the second one, if there is something that you know for sure Graham's told you he doesn't like you, there's nothing you can do about it. You go into radical acceptance, which is the understanding that not everyone's going to like you, and that's absolutely okay. But when you go through those steps, you're giving yourself agency over the thought and control over it, rather than just letting it spiral out of control. So there's so much that we can do with our mind, but we need to be consciously aware and understand that we need to watch our thoughts in order to be able to change the negative ones into positive, and any of the ruminating thoughts, be able to test them to see if what we're worrying about is actually true. And that allows us to break the cycle.
Yeah, I really like that. And how did you go learning that? Like, obviously it's a lot of trial and error.
It's just, I mean, over time, some of it's psychology and some of it's obviously neuroscience as well. And the more that I did it, the more that I started to realize that it would, to rewire your brain. The thing is, you need to watch your thoughts up until the day that you die, right? Because a crazy mind is an out of control mind. I mean, there's a beautiful poet Sufi from the 19th century. He's a Sufi poet called Rumi, and he says, why do you keep yourself in jail when the door is wide open? And with that, he's talking about the untrained mind, right? So why do you keep yourself in jail when that door is wide open? You have the ability to be able to live your best life, but it is your mind. And this is what my life was like up until that burnout that was keeping me in jail. I used to worry so much about everything. You know, I grew up in a family that was so loving and caring and still is, but the default was worrying, worrying that you were too cold, worrying that you were driving at nighttime. Everything was worrying. And when you grow up in an environment like that, your default becomes to worry about everything, right? You know, my 95-year-old grandmother, she still tells me she just like worrying gives her something to do.
Well, that's it. And that's what I find with some of the older generation. Just it actually makes them feel like they're still being productive or still thinking.
But it doesn't make your nervous system feel any good.
And then wondering why you're getting gut issues, or wondering why you're not sleeping, or
exactly,
you know, our skin could be better, things like that. Like, it's so interesting, isn't it?
It's so interesting. So for me, the freedom came when I used these different techniques, but also the understanding that I didn't need to stay in jail. I was able to change my mind and change my thoughts to be able to live a life of freedom and peace.
That's
it was...
And you're not losing power in that.
No, not at all. It was absolutely beautiful to know that I was able to do that. And that allowed me to want to teach others my skills and go, you know, and work as a mindset coach. And then obviously start my podcast so I could teach other people what I had learned over the years and through that dark night of the soul and the burnout.
It's so great, because even listening to that, like, I think the old version of me would have been like, oh, but then I feel like I'm just not paying attention to reality, or, you know, I have to think this way because that's, again, how I know. But like you said, it's such a powerful thing when you can actually rewire the brain, because at the end of the day, and, you know, I say this constantly and everyone's probably sick of me saying it, but everything is energy.
Yeah.
And, you know, it goes into, as, you know, you touched on before as well, also the law of attraction.
Well, like, birds of a feather flock together, right?
Well, that's it.
So, you know, one thing I really noticed when I started to change, you know, for change to occur, you need to change, right? And I did. And then people that came into my life were really of that higher vibration in a sense, and more dynamic, and it was like these doors started opening for me, and I really saw big changes in my life. Like, I left that radio role that was causing me burnout, and within, I think it was 1 month, I got the job as Hamish and Andy's producer. I mean, you couldn't find two more lovely dynamic people, but it all happened when I started changing who I was and how I presented myself to the world. And, you know, I think these practices that we talk about, they're unbelievably important in allowing you to live a good life, but they do take work, right?
And even when you were, you know, upgrading your mindset and sort of understanding life differently and seeing life differently, did you find that you sort of disconnected from older friends that were still stuck in the same mindset? Or like, how did we go about? Because again, I think a lot of people are, again, even afraid of losing sometimes what can be a negative attachment through, maybe because they've known someone for so long, or they feel sorry for someone.
Yeah.
Like, it is that understanding that
I did. I ended up moving away, no big breakups or anything like that, but moving away from people that I thought probably I couldn't give them what they needed anymore, and they couldn't give me what I needed. Because I think for a lot of us, we join through suffering, right? So you
That's it.
complain about something, I complain about something,
Shared
you
goal, interest.
talk negatively, I talk negatively. And when I made the decision that I didn't want to do that anymore, then I knew that I had to break ties with some people, and they weren't bad people, but I just knew that I needed to move forward in a different way. And you know, that's what happens with change. Sometimes it can be more radical, but if you're really wanting to do it in your life, you have to look at your life and work out what's working and what's not.
Dry hands, bring them back to life with Sarah Quinn's repetitive. Choose soothing lavender. Dry hands, bring them back to life with Sarah Quinn's reparative hand cream. Choose soothing lavender or indulgent coconut. Both are packed with 5 essential ceramides to nourish, protect, and leave your skin feeling soft, smooth, and rejuvenated. Available now at Chemist Warehouse. And with everything that you know now, especially through realizing what's working and what's not, what would you go back and tell 30-year-old Sarah? If she was sitting in front of you right now.
I would probably say something to do with the mind. You know, stop worrying. You don't need to be trapped within your mind. You know, everything is out there for you, and you can't change things that you can't control, right? And you're losing your present moment by worrying so much. You know, that my mind was my jail for a very long period of time. And I feel like, you know, sometimes you feel like, did I lose years in doing that? But you know, I feel like everything I've learned, I've absolutely gained so much. And that's when I also really started to dive into spirituality and understanding why we're here and what this journey is all about. And for me, I had a really great interest in learning about near-death survivors. And I haven't really spoken about this before, but I started to
dive into this because I want to hear about this.
I started to study near-death survivors and their journeys. And I have interviewed a lot on my podcast, but I did a lot of my own research and learnings within it. And even speaking to those people or learning about them, I saw that there was so many of the same stories through different people, right? And this fascinated me. I was like, wow, there are these people that have died and they have never been in touch with each other, or they've never even understood near-death experiences, yet they're coming with these same stories. This is so unbelievably interesting. And the more I got into it, the more it allowed me to realize that really we're here as a school. It's the earth, and this is not our home as such. Our home is the other realm. And it just made my experience moving through life almost more fulfilling after hearing a lot of these stories, because I thought, you know, for me, my belief is that we don't just come here because and then die. There is so much more to it. There is so much more to our journey, our ups and our downs. Everything is learning. And I'll never forget this one story that I heard, and it really touched me, and I'll tell it to you. There was a woman, and she was in this car accident, right? And it was a really obviously bad car accident, and she had a near-death experience. And she raised herself above her body, and she was looking down, and when she looked down at her body, she was slumped over the steering wheel. And cars had all piled up, right? And they didn't know what had happened to her. And she could hear in the different cars people complaining, oh my God, I'm going to be late for work. What's gone on? And they were just whinging from car to car to car. And then in the 6th car, she saw this woman whose head had bowed down in prayer. And she moved from her body, this lady, and was right next to this woman. And the woman was praying for her, right? And those prayers were being received back into this woman's heart. And then the woman moved back and she was on top of her body again. And when she was on top of her body, her angel was there, and her angel said to her, it's not your time to come home. It's not your time to come home. You need to go back into your body, and it's going to be painful for a period of time, but you're going to be okay. And before she went back into her body, she looked at the woman in the 6th car who had said the prayers, and she memorized her number plate. And she went back into her body, and it took 6 months, her recovery. And the angel was right. It was painful, but she got out of hospital and she was okay. And she found this woman, she looked up the number plate, and she bought her flowers and went to her house and said, when the lady answered the door, said, "I am the woman that you prayed for. Thank you." You know, and
Was that in the US?
Yeah, that was in the US. And I hear story upon story like this, and I love it because it gives me hope that we're here to make a difference, and we can mold our life to an extent for what we want it to be. And I'm not saying that in a way that sounds like Pollyanna, like everything will be perfect, and if we think a certain way, everything's going to go how we want it. That's not what the earthly school is here for. We're here to learn, and the bumps along the way, unfortunately, sometimes are our biggest learnings. But when you understand personal development work and you have a belief in a higher, higher energy out there, those bumps are not as hard because you understand that there is something that you need to learn from it, right? But when we're here and we don't have that understanding and we think life just comes at us, those bumps can be so much harder.
That's it. Like I said to everyone, like life just has to be classroom for the soul.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you're coming to school to study English and science and maths, and you're also coming to Earth to study relationships, personal growth, traumas especially. With that, like, how do you, in your mind and through what you've learned and the conversations that you've had, how do you see any difference between, say, religion and spirituality? Or do you see any difference between religion and spirituality?
I think, I appreciate both, right? I mean, I'm by no means a religious person at all, but I appreciate all religions because I think at the soul of all religions is beauty. I think that a lot of the time, the way that different religions look at their teachings, the way that's been interpreted is, not nice or
doesn't translate.
Yeah, it doesn't translate, I think, to what maybe it was written in its pure moment. And then, we see what we do with divided worlds and wars and all that kind of stuff, which I think at the heart of any religion they would not want, right? So I believe that religion enables people to come together. I see the beauty in religion. For me, being Jewish, I see Friday night dinners and families and
community connection.
Community and like a beautiful, beautiful way of being. And, all the other religions have that aspect to them as well, like bringing together family. Your children grow up learning about different great things that happened, be it Christmas or Easter or Ramadan or, Hanukkah or whatever religion you are. Like, these are beautiful times that you can spend with family and learn about what happened in history. There's no negativity in there, even if it is a hard time of history, still knowing about it. A lot of the times there are beautiful songs that the kids might sing that are attached to that time. I mean, that's just a coming together of family, right? And it's so beautiful. And I think having an understanding of a higher power is also not a bad thing. But when you give your power away to that, that's where I feel things get murky. Again, my belief that we're not being judged by something that's out there, that's right, that's wrong. One religion's better than another. I mean, I believe that we go to the next place and there ain't no religion.
That was my next question.
We all pray to the same God. I truly believe that. But what we want to call that God in the different religions is something different. But I also believe that there's a spark in God in everyone.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's 2 points to cover there, because whether you call it, God or Allah or Hashem, or even if the atheists reference it as science, no one doubts that it exists. We just all call it something differently.
Yeah.
And it's all energy.
It's all energy, right? And so I believe in all of that. And I think religion can be so beautiful, but I can also see the absolute darkness of it. And
that leads into the point that you just made, because even through my understanding and through conversations I've had with people, like, God and the devil are they live in here. it's part of all living energy.
Totally.
How
And
we
it's,
say it.
again, it kind of aligns. Religion and spirituality align, right? When we talk about the law of reciprocity, what you put out comes straight back to you. That's also a religious thing. Do to others as you would have them do unto you,
yourself.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you would also call that common sense. Like,
you would think
if you're going to
the
show
world's not
up
as
and
common
be
as it
rude
is.
to someone, do you not expect them to be rude back to you?
People are still shocked. Even in 2025,
Yeah.
people are still shocked by it.
It's like, I just cut that person off when I was driving and they honked at me. I can't believe it. Well, duh.
And the victimhood mentality kicks in. It's sort of like,
exactly.
yes,
And
you're at fault. Yes, you're the victim. Yeah.
So, but the same goes with kindness, right? You show up and you're kind to someone and you see that smile from ear to ear for them. Even in my life, and I love this, I think, the older I get, the wiser I get, I hope, and the more generous I get. I'm trying to always help out people. And if people need things, I will try. If I can help someone out, I will help them, right? And then I noticed so many people help me out. And I really believe that's that law of reciprocity, right? You do so much for people, people do so much for you. It might not be the same person that does so much for you.
But people still will,
Yeah, and you get away the feelings of competitiveness or jealousy. It's not about that, right? And when we look at life as being us working together rather than against each other, you find that you have these more cohesive relationships. When it's like David's there and I'm there, and David's got a podcast now, and oh my God, I'm so worried because we couldn't have two podcasts in this world. I mean, how ridiculous, right? But there would be people out there that think like that or get really worried about other people moving into an area that they're moving into. But if we see it as in like, how can we help each other? What can we do? Your growth is my growth. That's when you see that you actually start to flourish as well.
Well, so true. And so I just think so many people come from a lack mentality.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, it's part of society that we live in at the moment where everything seems to be a competition because of the lack surrounding us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But leading back on to something else that I also wanted to ask, and this is sort of putting you on the spot. What do you believe happens to us when we cross over? Even through, I mean, not necessarily near-death experience, but
I believe, and this is going from a lot of people who have had near-death experiences, but also like reading and studying different texts. And I studied the Kabbalah for many years when I was 18. Yeah. So when I was
the
18,
Jewish spiritual,
which is the Jewish spiritual text, this was quite bizarre, and I think it just showed an inkling
I was about
of
to
me
say, it shows an inkling from the
always
start.
kind of being interested in spirituality. I did not grow up like in a conservative Jewish family, and I did not go to a Jewish school.
But I did.
No, I didn't. And I yearned to know more about spirituality. And as a Jewish person, it seemed to me as the Kabbalah would be the place to go. So I asked around the community and found out that there was a particular rabbi who was very skilled in Kabbalah and one of actually the best in the world, not only just happened to be in Melbourne.
I was about to say based in Melbourne.
Yeah, based in Melbourne. He's been on my podcast,
What's
Rabbi Label Wolf. Yeah. And I actually wrote about him in my book. Anyway, so I called and called and called, and he just never called me back. And I left voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. And then suddenly I think it was like, we sound like funny, like someone that wants to convert to Judaism and they call and call and call and that's like going nowhere fast. Do you really want to do it?
Not for 3 years study.
And he called me back, and I think it was just when I told him, look, I'm just interested in studying Kabbalah. I think he was quite, he was quite taken aback that there was some 18-year-old girl when most people are out partying that wants to come and sit with him like an older man and learn through these texts. And
He
so
didn't go to a religious Jewish school either. Yeah.
So literally every Sunday I would go to his house in Balaclava Road in Eastern Kilda, and we would sit at his table. And I remember it like it was yesterday. He had like plastic over the table and we would sit there and we would read through these passages of the text, and then he would explain them to me. And I found that so unbelievably interesting. And a lot of it was to do with the soul, right? And what happens when we die and things like that, going back to your original question.
Like even at 18 though, how did that not go over your head? Like,
because I was so interested. So it actually reflects where I am in my life with my podcast and everything I do, that it was like my little soul at that age was just crying out for more
Wanting
nourishment.
to
And I
soak
think
it
I
in,
was
yeah.
always a little bit older than my age in the fact of what I was interested in and
Yeah.
things like that.
Clearly, yeah.
Yeah. And so then we studied for a year together. And so going back to your question, what do I think happens when we die? I think when we die, we cross over to another realm. You can call it heaven or whatever, whatever people like to refer to. And I feel like when we're there, we have an experience called a life review. And I've heard that through many near-death survivors as well as spiritual teachers. And within the review, we're shown parts of our life, things that we did that were very warming towards people.
It's like a judgment, but from the
Exactly.
Catholic perspective,
And
but not
things
really.
that
yeah.
we did that maybe weren't the best. And when we're in the midst of that review, we actually feel the emotions of the person at that time. So say, for
Ooh.
example, if we were quite nasty to someone, we go back to that moment in time, we're shown it, and we feel what that other person felt, right? And this happens for a period of time. And then there's no time apparently in the other realm, but obviously then we reincarnate for our next journey, dependent on what we still need to learn from the time before. So I really believe in reincarnation, and I really believe as well that we choose our parents. This is Kabbalistic, that we choose our parents and the people closest to us that we believe we need to help us out for our journey. So, they talk about soul families and that, for example, they might be my kids in this lifetime, but my son might have in a past lifetime been my mother or my best friend or something like that. So the soul families are actually kept together from reincarnation to reincarnation, but we change into different roles.
I believe that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever done past life regression?
No, I've seen a lot of it. I haven't done it personally, but I've watched a lot about it and studied a bit about it. It's fascinating.
I'm surprised it hasn't come up in meditation for you, because even when I've done meditations without even trying, I've gone into past life.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I've had readings where they've talked a little bit about past lives, but you can never know for sure if that's real because you weren't there.
That's it. I mean, for me, because my background as well, but
Yeah.
I'm still very logical on it all. So even when I do past life regression, it's sort of like, but where's the proof? We constantly seek validation, and I think that's a really good trick to kind of get ourselves out of that mindset, even that sometimes it just kind of happens. But
yeah.
I think,
and it's interesting.
it's
I find it very fascinating. And I think sometimes we go through life. I would hope that by the end of this life that I've done the best that I could. And I believe there are situations also in life where they were always going to happen, right? So some things in life we've got free will, but some things are destined. And I think some of the bigger things are destined, and the way you show up for them and the way you make your next move is completely free will.
No, definitely. I say exactly the same thing. Like, life is a triangle. So you've got the key points at the top of the things that you cannot avoid, and you've got an infinite amount of possibilities down the bottom. But whatever one you take will still end up in the same point. And
we both know Marianne Williamson. Well, you know what?
Yes.
We went to the show together.
I was kind enough to go
and she's
with a guest with
a
you.
dear friend, and she studies a lot in the Course of Miracles. I've studied the Course in Miracles too. And they say we can always choose through love, right? We can go to choose any situation through fear or love, but it is our choice of what we choose, right? And I feel that's life too. We could go into any situation and go, I'm petrified of this, or how can I turn this into a situation where I can give more of my heart to it?
I mean, it's really special for me to hear that, because it's something that I probably need to pay more attention to. I think, especially when you were talking before about, in the afterlife, if you get judged on how you made others feel. I mean, even as I work as a psychic medium, I like to try and think I'm leaving people in a happier, better place than I'd find them in some cases.
Absolutely. But even,
I'm a bit of a savage
sometimes when you're
sometimes,
grumpy and you
well, that's it. That's what I'm worried about
be
now.
as nice to, I don't know, the barista as you could have been.
I'm always nice to people that
I
do
feel
hospitality.
like you would, I feel like you would always show up.
I try to.
But that, again, it goes into conscious awareness, right? Like understanding, how am I going to be today? There is a line in the Course of Miracles that says, it's one of the courses, I will judge nothing that occurs today. And if you actually think about that, to go like one day of your life with no judgment, that's hard.
It is, because
We don't even realize
not
how much
wired
we're
like
judging.
That's it. You're not wired to do that.
Yeah.
But again, what you see in others is what you also see in yourself.
Yeah.
To lead back on with the past life regression, which I appreciate you haven't done, but I'm going to throw another random question. What do you think your karmic lesson for this life has been, or maybe still is to come?
I think through things that I can see would probably be a bit about what I just spoke about, which is to choose more through love rather than fear. And I think it goes back to that worrying thing when I was young, and just kind of worrying a lot about things. And I think I've gotten so much better than what I used to be like. But I think showing up and being more, I'm a very loving person, I will say that. And when people are close to me, I love with all my heart. I really do.
You're very giving. I
love with all my heart, and I love to love, right? But also
Daniel, if you're tuning in,
you
can be the mediator.
But I think there are points in my life where I get scared about things, and I think I need to move through life more, putting fear to the side and really heading more so down the love track.
Is there anything that scares you at the moment?
Not really. Not really. And I think, why it doesn't? Because of everything I've learned.
You've got the tools to
everything that we've spoken about allows you to live life in a way that is far less scary, because life is happening for you, not to you, and that everything happens for a reason, right? Even bad things happen for a reason. If you just think bad things happen, that's scary. But if you know that there is something that you might get out of that, and that sometimes when you hit a brick wall, it's detouring you into something better, and you have that faith, then that allows your life to be full of a lot more joy. It is these practices that have allowed me to live through love.
Well, that's it. And the one constant that we have in life is change. So sometimes, obviously, when things are going well and we're in a really happy mindset, a really happy mood, things in life are ticking along, we don't want to change. Like, you want to keep that constant because obviously it feels nice. It feels good. We are happy in that sense. But the universe always throws it to us, and spirit always talks about it. It's the biggest life evolutions, whether it's through events like the Dark Night of the Soul, but the biggest changes actually come through trauma.
Absolutely.
And negativity, because it forces us to change. It forces us to evolve, change our thinking. But, you make such a great point, because if you can look at it about like, okay, why is this happening? What am I in control of? But what's also showing me, that's where the real underlying sort of silver lining or the real golden nugget is. And that's even through the most traumatic events.
Yeah, it is.
And some people, which all about as well with the people that you've spoken to and interacted with, some people go through a lot of shit.
Oh, people go through hell and back.
I hear some stories, I'm just like, oh.
You would hear a lot because of the work that you do. And, a life of greatness, most people have like some hardcore story. But the most beautiful part is they move through it.
That's it.
They move through some of the worst things. And, take Scarlett Lewis, whose son Jesse died. He was murdered at Sandy Hook Massacre. I mean, the kid was this beautiful grade 1 child. He was 5 years old, and he was shot down by a murderer who came into the school and literally shot nearly the whole grade 1 class. And I'm sitting with her talking about forgiveness that she had for the person that murdered her 5-year-old beautiful son. I mean, just people go through some extraordinary things, and yet they rise above them. And that is it's so amazing for us to see, because it really gives you hope that even in your darkest moments, you can rise up again.
You're still the one in control.
Yeah.
That's it. No emotion or no event has power over you.
Seriously.
It doesn't mean that we forget it or that we don't give it credence or acknowledgement, but it can't control it.
Yeah. And
it's incredibly special.
Yeah, it is. And sitting in front of people, hearing their stories, seeing how they've like risen through some of the most traumatic times or changed their lives, it's an absolute privilege.
It's incredible. So we need to let everyone know all about the podcast again. So it's called A Life of Greatness.
It's called A Life of Greatness.
But you've also got the book
My
as
book
well,
is Living a Life of Greatness. So slightly different name, but very similar.
Yeah.
So A Life of Greatness is the podcast. As you said, there's 500 and something episodes, from Matthew McConaughey to Gina Davis to Esther Perel to David the Medium to
when's that coming out?
Yeah, Eddie Maguire.
Eddie Maguire. I like his wife, Carly Maguire's great. Have you ever met Carly?
No, I've never met her.
Anyway, just on.
I mean, there's a whole.
And I won't make you pick your favourite guest because I know there can't be
and,
one.
I can only always remember the ones from the last couple of months.
I'm exactly the same. Don't ask me who my season 1 guest was.
No, exactly. And they're all amazing in their own different way. And the book Living a Life of Greatness is all about mindset and my own journey and it's a good read. Ways. Yeah.
I've got a signed copy.
Yeah, you do have a signed
copy.
One.
Yeah, it came to the book launch.
So, yeah, they're two of the different things that I have out into this world.
Yeah, and you've been doing some live shows yourself recently. Like what's on the agenda coming up?
So I've got a live show either, I'm not sure if this will be out before or after, but I'm touring with Stacey Sims, who's, a longevity women's health expert, talks about hormones and menopause and perimenopause and diet and exercise and strength training, you name it. And we are going on tour at the end of October. We're in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide.
Beautiful. Podcast will be out at the end of October. So this is good
perfect timing.
Yeah. Guys, if you're listening.
If you're listening, buy tickets. So, the live touring thing's been a part of what I do for a little time. I love it, as you probably do, being in front of a live audience. It's just it just ignites your soul.
It really does. And I'm a natural introvert. Well, maybe I'm not, but maybe I just always labeled myself as that. But there's something about when you get me on a stage and you give me a microphone.
You're very good.
I just am so rogue. But I have so much fun with it.
Yeah.
Like I find it easier being on stage in front of 500 people than I would sometimes interviewing a podcast guest that I haven't met before.
That's so interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And you're naturally very funny.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've always said that to
Everyone's
you, though.
surprised by that. But it's just,
But even in your Instagram posts, I always have a bit of a chuckle if I look at them because they're always like...
That's more the close friends.
I think it's because you say what I think but wouldn't say. And so you have that humour that goes with it too, which I think adds. Like I toured with a guy called Johan Hari last year, who also is like a big New York Times bestselling author. Talks a lot about trauma and attention span and all this kind of stuff. He's a well-renowned English journalist. And he was very funny, which made the live show really good because not only were we talking about serious matters, but then he would throw in these like hilarious jokes. So I think it's nice to have the balance between both.
Well, that's it. You got to have a balance. I mean, especially at my live shows when we're talking about such heavy topics, unfortunately, we're dealing with grief and trauma and loss and it's just a remembrance that at the end of the day, life can also be quite fun.
Yeah.
You can have fun with it.
It should be fun.
It doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge and respect and honor the dark, but live in the light. That's what I say. Yeah.
That's what I always say. Be playful and be there and present in your life. You don't want to miss your life because you're caught in your head like, I did for
worrying
so
about what's
many
going to
years.
happen. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or what you can't change. Yeah.
Yeah. Live your life to the fullest, but you need to be present to be able to be there and having, fun moments with friends or your children or your family and doing more of what you love. That's going to bring you joy and allow you to live a fulfilling life.
Well, you basically just answered my final question, but I was going to throw it back on you because it's a question you ask all your guests about how do we live a life of greatness? What does a life of greatness look like to you?
I think a life of greatness to me definitely is aligned with service. My life changed when I was able to give back to people, right? Really in the most radical way. And, I'll never forget, it was maybe a year or two ago, I got some Facebook messages from this mother who had listened to my podcast for a very long period of time. And she had a daughter, she was in hospital with her daughter who was dying, and her daughter was 10. And she sent me a photo of her and her daughter. And she said, I'm sitting in hospital here in Queensland and my daughter's dying. And I just listened to your podcast nonstop. And they've gotten me through this really, really tough time. And I'll never forget that because that to me is what it's all about. To be able to share what I have learned and my expertise, to be able to help other people on their journey. I mean, that is a great life.
Isn't it? That's what it's all about, isn't
You
it?
know, loving what I do, you know, having a job that gives me purpose, gives me meaning, that lights me up more than anything. Having fabulous friends, being able to give to them, having a rich family life, that is a life of greatness, service, purpose, living in integrity. That's a big part of what I do as well. One thing with the podcast, I would say, I never want to be saying or spruiking things that I don't do myself. You know, as you know, I have very stringent things that I do. I meditate, I do visualization, I chant, I do all this stuff because I believe in it. And I want to show up to people being the truest version of what I can be. So authenticity is a very big part of what I do. And I think if you throw all of those things in to your life, it's going to be a great one.
Absolutely love that. Well, Sarah Grynberg, thank you so much for joining me. Now, people know about the podcast and the book, but where can we also find you on social media?
You can find me, Sarah Grynberg, on Instagram. I think Sarah Grynberg on everything. LinkedIn, TikTok.
You're on TikTok, yeah.
YouTube is a big part of what I do as well. My website, sarahgrynberg.com.
Wonderful.
That's
where tickets will be on sale for the live show?
Tickets on sale for the live show and not on the website. They're through, if you put Stacey Sims and Sarah Grynberg off, through fane.com.au.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I've loved every moment of it.
Not as much as I have. Thanks.